There's been a recent surge of young adults, 18 to 30-year-old Gen Z and Millennials, increasingly choosing to live with their parents, not move out, and not pay these exorbitant modern-day rent prices. If you are one of millions of young people who find yourself in this situation, I have a message for you. I'm not about to tell you the same cliches you've already heard a million times. Don't compare yourself to others. It's okay to go at your own pace, whatever. Nah, those don't come anywhere close to doing you justice. My message to you is this: keep it up. You are doing God's work. You are actively burning down a corrupt, parasitic system that's immoral to its core. Let's find out why. If you're an unemployed young person living with your parents, you're lazy. You're a burden to society. Gen Z is just so lazy for feeling like they're just entitled to free money without working for it. You need to get a job and rent your own place so that you can pay $2,000 a month to a landlord who feels entitled to receive this money for free without working for it. For you to bust your ass working 80 hours a week to fund his lifestyle of just sitting around doing nothing and just collecting rent all day.
Wait a minute. This doesn't make sense. He didn't provide any labor value for receiving this rent money. He didn't create the land or build the apartment. He's not contributing anything to society by collecting rent for land that already existed long before he did. All he did was buy a property at a time when it was way cheaper than pull the ladder up behind him in typical boomer fashion. Doesn't this make boomer landlords the real parasitic burden to society they accuse Gen Z of? We're the ones actually working our tails off to fund their parasitic lifestyles of sitting around doing nothing collecting rent all day.
Yup, exactly, Chris. You're asking all the right questions now. And believe me, we have a whole lot of interesting answers coming up. The insane cost of rent and home ownership these days have been by far the biggest parasitic burden on young people today. It feels like in the last few years alone, rent costs have just about doubled. And the real estate market is even worse. Home ownership is a pipe dream for us at this point. It's a waste of time to even think about it. But have you ever stopped to think about how nonsensical it is in the first place that we actually even have to pay rent? Why do we have to pay money to landlords for the right to live on land when land itself didn't cost money to create in the first place? An iPhone costs money to make. It costs money to extract the hard materials, manufacture the parts, program the software, etc. So it makes sense why we have to pay money to get an iPhone that cost money to create. But land didn't cost any money to create at all. It literally existed for billions of years before humans did, before the concept of money even existed. And yet rent takes up over half of your paycheck now. Isn't it odd how the freest thing in the universe, something that took no human labor to build or create, is the one thing we have to spend the most of our human labor to pay for? Now, to be fair, when you're paying for rent, not all of it is just going to the naturally existing plot of land below. Landlords do have some business expenses such as various maintenance fees, property taxes, and utilities in some cases. Some landlords are also still technically paying a mortgage themselves, but this doesn't explain the problem, it just pushes it back one step. In this type of arrangement, you're just indirectly paying the bank for land they didn't build or create, instead of directly paying the landlord. But these little miscellaneous costs do not come anywhere close to how much the landlord profits off rent. There's also the obvious fact that somebody had to build a house or apartment you're renting out. And so it makes sense that it would cost money, but it still doesn't explain why you're paying the landlord and not the builder. The idea of paying rent would feel a lot less exploitative if we were actually paying the people who actually built the thing, and not the boomer landlord who just bought it when it was way cheaper. Hey guys, so I'm on a mission and I need your help. You see, I've made it the purpose of this channel to defend Gen Z from all these nasty, delusional Gen Z haters, and I've just realized we're starting to get close to taking down the most despicable one yet, the angry guy. This guy is not just another delusional old fart calling Gen Z lazy. He's literally had videos where he openly celebrates Gen Z suffering and even dying. He's just straight up a terrible, terrible human being. Now, thankfully, his channel is rapidly dying and we are rapidly gaining ground on him as we speak. So, if you're new here and enjoying this content, definitely consider subscribing and helping us take down the biggest Gen Z hater out there. The current goal is to surpass him in subscribers by the end of summer. With your help, we can absolutely do this. So, to get a clearer picture, let's really break down the economics of rent to see how much you're paying for the apartment itself as opposed to the land beneath it that was created for free. Now, calculating land value is a bit tricky. It's going to vary a lot depending on the location. For example, in a rural area, it might only be worth 10% of the property value. But in a major city like San Francisco, for example, it can be worth up to 95% of it. This means that if you were paying the average rent of $3,400 in San Francisco, over $3,000 of that is a total fraud and a scam. You're having to pay $3,000 a month for a resource that cost $0 to create and existed for billions of years before humans did. Now, the best source I could find for an overall valuation was a 2009 report from the Fed, which estimates that $4.5 out of $9 trillion of total real estate value across the United States was based on land valuation alone, not the construction. So, generally speaking, about half of what you're paying in rent is based on a total lie and a scam. And so this is why Gen Z is not growing up, so to speak, not moving out and not renting from these parasitic landlords. This isn't just smart from a personal standpoint, it's downright revolutionary. It's exposing the biggest scam and grift in human history, the idea that we have to pay to live on land that was free to create.
Wait a minute, Phil. Does this mean you're against private property and ownership now? Are you trying to take away everyone's property? You know, they're about to call you a communist a million times in the comments, right?
Actually, no. There are better solutions we can implement into making the system not just more fair, but just straight up more logical for everyone. And we'll talk about those in just a bit here. But first, I gotta take a quick second to set up what's probably about to be the greatest dunk of my YouTube career.
Oh dear, what do you have up your sleeve now?
Well, Chris, you're right. I'm going to get a million comments calling me a communist in this video, just like in every other video. So, for all of you out there who enjoy calling me a communist, I got a little quick pop quiz for you. The following are two direct quotes from, let's just call him, a pretty well-known individual. Let's see if you can correctly guess who said it.
The rent of land, considered as the price paid for the use of the land, is naturally a monopoly price. It is not at all proportioned to what the landlord may have laid out upon the improvement of the land, but to what the farmer can afford to give. As soon as the land of any country has all become private property, the landlords love to reap where they never sowed, and demand a rent even for its natural produce.
What this person is essentially saying in modern English is that landlords don't work, don't provide value, and are purely a parasitic burden on the working class. Pretty much everything I've been saying this whole video, and he's right about that. So, for those of you who enjoy calling me a communist, it's time to take the pop quiz. Who was the guy who said these quotes? Karl Marx? Nope. Mao Zedong? Nope. Joseph Stalin? Nope, wrong again. The correct answer is actually Adam Smith.
Wait, that Adam Smith? The father of capitalism himself, Adam Smith? The very guy these corporate shills praise as the god to their capitalist religion, Adam Smith?
Yup, the same exact Adam Smith. And not only did he directly write these quotes, they're from the very same famous book that founded the fundamental belief systems of capitalism itself, The Wealth of Nations.
Holy this really was the greatest dunk of your YouTube career. Ha! Eat that corporate shills.
All right, thank you, David. Here's Harden with the drive.
Sorry guys, I just had to do that. Couldn't resist. Alright, so you guys know that I'm generally pretty anti-capitalist, so it was incredibly ironic to me when I found out that the OG founder of capitalism himself actually 100% agreed with me on this issue. And he's absolutely right about this. Being forced to pay to live on land that was created totally for free makes absolutely zero sense whatsoever, even from a free market capitalist perspective. In fact, especially from a free market capitalist perspective. Capitalists tell us that there's no such thing as a free lunch, that the problem with socialism is that eventually you run out of other people's money, and that you're taking away money from those who do work and giving it to the unproductive lazy who don't work. Except that is by definition literally what landlords are doing to young people right now. Landlords do not work for their money. This is just a fact. It takes no physical or mental labor whatsoever to collect rent. The act of collecting rent also provides absolutely zero economic value or benefit to society at all. A farmer grows food for the rest of us to eat. Plumbers and electricians keep our lights on and our water flowing. Construction workers are the ones who actually built the houses we live in. Yet, they barely receive a one-time shitty dogshit hourly wage, while the landlord gets to profit off his labor and charge these insane rent prices for the rest of eternity. All for sitting around, not working, and doing nothing all day. Who's really the parasitic class here? Who's really the burden on who? Who's really sitting around doing nothing all day and forcing the rest of us to work miserable jobs to subsidize their lazy existence? Adam Smith was not the only well-respected economist who agreed with the idea that landlords are the true parasites and collecting rent is not a job that produces any sort of objective value. David Ricardo, another founding father of capitalism, said in his book, The Principles of Political Economy, that rent is that portion of the produce of the earth which is paid to the landlord for the use of the original and indestructible powers of the soil. What he's essentially saying here is that the only reason rent costs more in some places than in others is because the land itself is better in some places than in others, and not because the landlord himself did anything different or better. And he's absolutely right about this. A landlord in New York City will make significantly more than one in a rural area in Alaska, but he didn't work more or produce any more value to earn this extra money. Even the founding fathers of capitalism itself, Smith and Ricardo, both admitted that landlords don't actually create value, they just extract it. One economist took it a step further, however, and said that society would actually be better off if rent were taxed away entirely. Sounds like a radical idea at first, right? But after you listen to it, I promise it absolutely makes a lot of sense. Henry George is not necessarily a household name when it comes to famous economists throughout history, but he absolutely should be. His economic theory of Georgism is genius, and in my opinion, even more relevant today than when he first came up with it hundreds of years ago. You see, although all of this stuff makes perfect sense, coming up with an actual solution is a bit trickier. No one technically created the land, but does that mean we should just totally abolish private property altogether? Now, that would actually be communism then. Instead, Henry George came up with a far more elegant solution. George argued, and in my opinion argued correctly, that humans did not create the land, therefore the unearned value of the land should belong to the public as a whole and not just a parasitic landlord class. His proposal was to tax only the value of the land itself, not the building's improvement or capital. For example, if you were to build a house, you shouldn't be taxed for making it nicer. But if the land value under it rises in value just because the city around it improved, that value increase belongs to everyone. Why? Because land value is not created by landlords. It is created by the community who built the schools, roads, parks, and culture around it by public investment, such as railroads, highways, and infrastructure. And of course, nature that existed long before humans did. Rivers, beaches, forests, etc. The end result is brilliant. You eliminate the parasitic landlord class, but people still get to own their homes and buildings. The land beneath, however, is taxed at its full rental value. This lowers rent, funds public services, and most of all, ensures that land is used for what it's actually meant for. for people to live on, not for investors to speculate and profit off of. Now, those of you who follow me know that I'm a huge advocate for universal basic income. One fair question a lot of you have asked me is this: won't that just make everything more expensive? Won't your rent just go up by $1,000 if you get $1,000 a month in UBI? Well, a recent UBI study was done in South Korea in a specific region of Seoul known as Gyeonggi. After the conclusion of the study, one unexpected side effect they found was that their version of UBI, also known as Gyeonggi Pay, had absolutely zero impact on inflation in the area. Now, to be fair, this was a very small study, and the amount given out wasn't very much either. But we should still have seen a small, slight, even a 0.01 rise in prices. So, why didn't we? Well, it turns out that Gyeonggi Pay was funded via a property tax, much like the land value tax under Georgism. Therefore, the total money supply did not go up, and UBI had absolutely zero effect on inflation whatsoever. So, implementing a land value tax to fund UBI not only makes logical and moral sense, it's been proven through real-life experiments and data that it works. Directly taxing rent itself makes the UBI inflation concern a self-correcting issue. If the landlords raise your rent in response to UBI, fine. They'll just end up getting taxed more from the extra rent you're paying, and your UBI will end up going up even more as well. It also totally solves the issue of capital flight, or in more simple finance bro terms, what if rich people just leave? Okay, they can leave all they want, but they can't take the land with them. Oftentimes, the AI revolution is generally at the forefront of the UBI conversation, and it is absolutely a factor we need to address as well. But you didn't even need AI to take your job to deserve a universal basic income. You deserved it. We're entitled, yes, entitled to it, because paying to live on land that was created for free billions of years before humans even existed is quite literally the biggest scam and grift of modern capitalism ever, and even the founding fathers of capitalism themselves would agree with this. Now, Georgism is a hell of an interesting concept, and if you want to go further down this rabbit hole, we got the perfect video for you to watch next right here. Check it out. I'll see you there. Thanks for watching.